In the name of one God, Creator, Redeemer, and Sanctifier. Amen. The Ark of the Covenant plays a vital but enigmatic role in the Old Testament. It's the central religious phenomenon from the days in the wilderness until its installation in Solomon's temple. But after that, it disappears except for vague hints in the account of King Josiah's religious reforms in the late 7th century BCE. And after that, it's only referred to in the high priest's annual entrance into the Holy of Holies. But for a religion that was so meticulously specific, it is strange how there is no account of the history of the second pair of tablets of stone. One would have thought that if only one treasure could have been rescued from the Roman destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD, it would have been this. In truth, they might never have existed. For most Jews in the late Old Testament period, what mattered was the revival under King Josiah of the temple tradition of tariff sacrifice for the remission of infractions. Which became the central feature of Mosaic law. When the New Testament talks about the temple, it hardly ever refers to the Holy of Holies, but there are copious references to animal sacrifice. This duality is replicated in a strange way in the Church of England, where the Catholic tradition of reserving the sacrament is a shadowy phenomenon which lives alongside our more liturgical routine. The Jewish Old Testament tradition is far less continuous and uniform than we might think, as we too often rely for our sense of the past on highly illuminated incidents, while leaving most of the tradition in obscurity. Who, after all, has read either the Book of Kings or the books of Chronicles from beginning to end? But the state of affairs at the time of Jesus, though politically precarious, had been liturgically rigid since the time of the Maccabees. So when Jesus was perceived to challenge that status quo, it was the equivalent of a modern political revolution where people lost their bearings. The turbulence of the Jesus revolution is much better portrayed in Pauline agonizing than in Luke's glittering prose. So when the disciples are sent out, it is into a necessarily hostile world, which explains Jesus' instructions. Hostile in the sense of the natural reaction of a fundamentally conservative society to change. The only mitigating factor in answer to the question, if we accept this new way of living, what's in it for us? The only real answer that the people could hang on to was miraculous healing. Now, I wouldn't want to say that our current situation in the Church of England is an exact parallel of the Jesus Revolution, but there are some features of which we should be aware. Features which remind us of the confrontation between temple ritual and the more expansive message of Jesus. It was not enough, remember, to pay for infraction of a penalty. The new way of Jesus said that people had to go the extra mile. So for people like us, the outlook is, from a personal point of view, rather grim. Traditional liturgy is declining in practice and force. Churches are closing and choirs disappearing. Fresh expressions are only exiguously sacramental. Structures are congregational rather than episcopal. And the emphasis on the bilateral relationship between the worship and Jesus is hollowing out the Church's commitment to the common good. Here is one simple illustration. The New English hymnal has 3 titles containing the word I. The hymn book we use here has 15. Songs and Hymns of Fellowship has 54. We are now at a juncture where we have to make some serious decisions about what's baby and what's bathwater. Given that the current trend looks inexorable, what do we want to save? Let me start the other way around. What we should be suspicious of saving is the carapace of our own aesthetic preference. Choral Evensong is beautiful, but it's not essential. We could dispense, if we had to, with some of the ritual and language we find aesthetically pleasing and comfortable. So here for me is a bottom line. The things we have to keep at all costs. First, we are Trinitarian. It might surprise you that many new Christians are only vague about this doctrine. The Trinity is indissoluble. Secondly, we are saved by the death and resurrection of Jesus, not just his death. The incarnation, death, and resurrection are indissoluble. Thirdly, we are sacramental. We are a church of word and sacrament, not just word. And that bond is also indissoluble. Finally, we are committed to a holy life of loving God and our neighbour, and that is indissoluble. It might surprise you to know this, but there are people who count themselves in the Church of England who would not accept these 4 indissolubilities, mostly through ignorance or carelessness. Those who think the health of our church be measured in head count are apt to be unexacting. So when I make these proposals, it is not because of personal preference or my aesthetic sensibilities, but because there are doctrinal core issues which cannot be compromised. To ask others to make sacrifices for Christ is impossible if we are not prepared to make sacrifices ourselves, either by losing what we like or by facing the scorn of others. Amen.